As a person with some melanin in his skin, I feel like there was one stereotype that no one in my family was able to beat. My dad couldn't, my cousins couldn't get away from it, not even my grandma. This stereotype has plagued generations with its unwavering grip on our community. This stereotype is a weird one to say the least, and that is, well, we love Tekken. This is a generalization, of course, but for this video, I wanted to go back and talk about my first fighting game, Tekken 5, what made it special, how it came to be gameplay wise, and how it became the stepping stone to what modern Tekken is. Tekken 5 was released November 15, 2004 in Japan for the Namco System 256 arcade machine, with a worldwide debut following December 2004. Tekken, among other games at the time, were released in arcades first, with the home console version releasing shortly after. In the case of Tekken 5, it was released on the PlayStation 2 February 24, 2005 in the United States, March 31st in Japan, and June 24th in Europe. The home console release would include modes that wouldn't be in Tekken 5 arcade versions, such as the Devil Within mode. This mode showcases a story for Jin Kazama, the protagonist of the franchise at the time. While modes like the Devil Within would contribute to the success of this entry in the franchise, I feel like gameplay would be the main reason people cherish, love, and fondly reminisce about Tekken 5. You see, Tekken 5's gameplay is a direct response to how Tekken 4 was received by fans on release. Some features, such as uneven stages, a more urban look to the character designs and stages, reworked characters, and combo changes were the game's fault according to players. With Tekken 4, they focused more on environmental gameplay as opposed to the characters themselves. This led to design decisions such as weaker movement and less intuitive combos. Movement features that had been established, such as the Korean backdash, were not available in this title. These changes kind of made Tekken 4 a commercial flop in a sense. While Tekken 4 itself didn't do badly in terms of sales, it ended up selling more than 2 million copies. Many publishers would love to sell 2 million copies of their games, it just didn't do as well as Tekken 3, which sold 8.3 million copies on the PlayStation 1. Tekken 3 was the second best selling fighting game of all time for a long time, so trying to top that would be a company's top priority for financial reasons. Tekken 4 did so poorly that the director, producer, and many other roles at Namco, Katsuhiro Harada, left the company. To paraphrase and clarify, he does say that it wasn't due to the fan reception of Tekken 4 itself, but it is kind of implied that it was due to the company's pressure for the game to succeed. However, he did return a year later with a new perspective and somewhat return to basics attitude. This would definitely be reflected in everything that is Tekken 5. With Tekken 5, gameplay would in spirit return to what Tekken 3 had established. The way movement work came back, but was better than ever. Korean backdash made its return along with side steps and jumping. Combos themselves would see a change. They would do more damage, and the juggle system will lead to fun combos. For most people, this felt like a natural progression from which Tekken 3 and Tekken Tag Tournament had left off. Even the devs felt this way, or at least it is implied that they do. In interviews leading up to Tekken 5's release, developers, producers, and the like would express how the game was crafted with fan feedback in mind. There are links to those in the description. Also, thank you all for helping me hit 100 subscribers. YouTube is a milestone based system, so hitting that milestone means I can add links to the description along with other helpful things that make my videos way better. So consider subscribing or don't, it's up to you. One of the key features they would talk about in these interviews was the gameplay and how they wanted new people to play the games, whether they were novices at fighting games or not. Instead of tweaking the gameplay mechanics so much that the game wouldn't be fun for people who have been playing Tekken for quite some time, the development team opted to add characters that would be easier for people to control. Asuka is a character that comes to mind. She's relatively easy to play compared to characters like the Mishimas, who have way more complex movement and controls, but the inclusion of these easier characters didn't take away from the overall roster, so to speak. Characters like Devil Jin will still hold that complexity from past titles that made Tekken have its depth. Tekken 5 had a lot of characters ranging from easy for Tekken to difficult. The roster size was a whopping 32 characters. This was a huge jump over the 23 and Tekken 4 that added new characters such as the aforementioned Devil Jin and Asuka, by bringing back fan favorites like Martial Law and Kazuya. Testimonies from people who were old enough to buy games on their own at the time relate to me that the reason that they bought Tekken 5 was due to their favorite character returning and new characters looking cool among other parts of the game that appealed to them. Tekken over the years has developed the title of a legacy series. What I mean by that is if you've played Tekken 6, you'll have a leg up in Tekken 7, or 8, or Tekken Tag Tournament 2. Because for the most part, at the core of each of these games, characters, stages, and core gameplay mechanics carry over to the succeeding title. Even the layout is pretty much the same as it's been since its inception. Each button on the face of controller controls a limb. I'm using the PlayStation 2 controller as a basis for this. The square button is the left punch, triangle is for right punch, cross or X, or however you want to say it, was for left kick, and circle was for the right kick or right leg. This will carry over all the way up to modern Tekken 8. Not only that, characters' move lists from this game, even games prior to that, would carry over to modern games. And each character will have a super long command list. I mean, over 100 moves. Some characters will even have 70 or even less, but this made characters fun to learn. You learn what moves that each character had were useful, which ones that you didn't necessarily need at the time. But if you've been playing the game for quite some time, you eventually end up learning each move as they do carry over to each subsequent title. And that started with the groundwork laid with Tekken 5. Tekken 5 became the basis as to what modern Tekken would feel and play like. If you play Jin in Tekken 5, chances are you could play Jin in every Tekken game afterwards. Same thing with movement. If you know how to Korean backdash in Tekken 5, you can do it in Tekken 8, 6, 7, etc, etc. Of course, it made tweaks to the character stages and the overall gameplay over time. A good example would be the bound attack system in Tekken 6 or screw attack in Tekken 7. Also the inclusion of heat moves and stuff like that. But when it comes down to what Tekken is in the modern era, it was built off what Tekken 5 began as. Personally, I like that Tekken has become a legacy series. It rewards me for continuing to invest in the franchise by playing each release. Something I wasn't initially going to put at the end, but I thought it wouldn't be a proper mini retrospective if I didn't talk about the feature that has been in every Tekken since Tekken 5, the character customization. In Tekken 5, you have your story mode, arcade mode, the Devil Within mode, time attack, and survival. You can also play Tekken 1 and 3 in this game. Each of these modes rewards you with Tekken's in-game currency to purchase different items in the game, particularly customization options. Customizing your characters was a huge part of Tekken 5. On top of having alternate costumes, Tekken 5 added a customization mode that allowed players to alter aspects of the character's outfits. This mode, in my opinion, was the epitome of what an offline fighting game should have been at the time. It made you want to play more of the game to get more money, to get more items, to customize your character. Modes like this, along with great gameplay and characters, is why Tekken 5 went on to sell over 8 million copies. That and the fact that they had re-released the game multiple times on different consoles. For instance, the Tekken 5 I talked about in the video mostly was the PS2 version. However, after the PS2 release, Tekken 5 will get released 2 more times in the form of Tekken 5 Dark Resurrection for the PlayStation Portable, PSP, and the PlayStation 3. Small little tidbit, while during the loaded screen, you could actually play like this Space Invader type game, or would that be Space Invader? I forgot the name of it, but I'll put it in the video. This definitely adds to the charm of Tekken 5. That and the fact that Bandai Namco had the patent to put mini games in loading screens. Sometimes Bandai sucks, man. This version would add a series staple going forward in Lily and Dark Resurrection Online, an add-on that lets you play, well, online. Tekken 5 for me is like anyone's first anything. It's hard to top due to the nostalgia and memories alone. Back in the mid to late 2000s, I remember getting a heavy yellow backpack. It was worn and torn to the point that the yellow was starting to turn a pasty gray. When you open it, it was like getting hit with memories, not of your own, but of those who had worn it in the past, like your avatar. In this ancient relic came another, a PlayStation 2. Along with it were a bunch of PlayStation 1 and 2 games. Among those was NCAA, basketball, football, and other sports games. While I wasn't too interested in those, the one that caught my eye was Tekken 5, and Tekken 3 too. I popped in the Tekken 5 disc, and it changed the way I thought about fighting games. My only semblance of experience with fighting games before then were the Naruto Clash of Ninja games for the GameCube. With Tekken 5, it felt like a whole new world. Learning characters like Devil Jin, and Asuka was fun and intuitive. Just mashing against the computer to get a customization piece was fulfilling to someone who hadn't turned 10 yet. I used to think I was the best until I played against my mom. She played Christy, and if anybody who's played Tekken in the past and who doesn't know any matchup about it when you first start out, you know that beating that character is hard for beginners. And I got beat so bad that instead of quitting, I learned to fight against the demon and her counterpart, Eddie Gordo, who was an alternate skin for Christy in this game, by the way. You could also say it was Baby's first matchup practice. Tekken 5 taught me how to enjoy fighting games in a different way, with feature-rich modes, what it did for the Tekken franchise, and how it would play going forward, and more than anything else, being a fun game. I believe Tekken 5 is arguably the best Tekken game. If not, it's definitely up there among the best Tekken games ever. I would go even further and say it's one of the best fighting games ever. But again, this was my first fighting game, so I'm always going to be biased towards it. And it's definitely in my top 5 games of all time.
26, 25, 24, 23, 22, 21, 20, 19, 18, 17, 16, 15, 14, 13, 12, 11, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.